O ye of little faith, you all should know. Even if you turn every star against me, you will never break me. For even with all the power of all the gods of all the heavens, a man's will shall rise above them all to knock it down. For gods may never die, but man shall never yield. Unknown. A mama's boy. Do we really have to go in today? I asked no one out of annoyance. Yes, was Mary's answer. It's a school day, just like any other. Oh, no, it's not, Adrian chuckled. I've been hearing a lot of upperclassmen. Today is the final field day of the semester. So what? I asked. I had just suffered 4 straight days of advanced quizzing about all the stuff the teachers had lectured us about. At least I assumed that's what the tests were about. I just knew it was about 6 hours of mental torture. But for whatever reason, Hadrian was excited. Oh, I'm not gonna spoil it. Adrian smiled his evil grin. Whatever, was my response. We were riding the bus with the whole team, as we had started a morning study group at the local library to review possible questions. All under the order of our team leader, Mary. There were no tests scheduled for today, but we still met up, and were now heading to school together. Oh man, now I'm curious, Ashley moaned. Tell us, Adrian. Nope, you're gonna have to wait and see. Adrian chuckled as we arrived at the school's bus station and walked the final block. We were earlier than usual, and it showed as the courtyard was sparse with bodies. We didn't bother chatting with anyone else, as we headed straight inside. We were starting to get a reputation as the bad kids, mostly because of Adrian, despite the efforts of our team leader. I have sources that have hinted to the nature of today's activities, Runser said in his standard smug-ass tone, which reminded me to put the payment for the stupid loan I let him give me in the mail. Wizards apparently do business through the mail when possible. He turned his head to grace us with his glorious gaze. Adrian's certainty brings concern that they might be correct. Oh, what is it? Ashley asked, nearly jumping each of her steps. Tell us! No, it's rather too dreadful to think about, was Runser's response, as he turned his head away, as if he believed just speaking the idea of today's activities, whatever they were, would force the universe to make them happen, which he likely did believe, the fucker. Mary, make them tell! Ashley whined to our team leader, who rubbed her temples in annoyance. Ashley, no. I don't care what today is about. We made it through exams, and that's what matters. What happens today, happens. Now shush. Ashley lost her bounce and pouted, turning to Lucas. Lucas, be on my side. Do as our team leader says, Lucas said without tone or inflection, causing Ashley to slump in defeat. Honestly, Nazuri added just as we got to class, I agree with Mary full on. So long as the testing torture is over, I'm golden. Oh my god! Ashley whined at the top of her voice. You guys suck! We all took our seats, except for Nazuri, who sat by Mary talking until forced to go to her own seat. After everyone was seated, our teacher came into the class. It was still unbelievable, but there he was, the Mr. Galacto, Earth's greatest hero, a high school history teacher. It was such bull. Alright, class, listen up. Mr. Galacto was already taking a swig off his flask. Today is the last day before autumn break, and the last field day. So be noted that today is going to be a big one. Now, let's go ahead and start making our way to the field. The feeling through the class was mixed. Adrian and Simi were hyped up, but others like Alice and Jennifer were clearly nervous. I leaned in forward and whispered, "Hey, Half-Pint, do you know the score here?" York said back without turning, "I have made a number of predictions, but with no evidence to base anything on, it would be pointless to share." Translation: I wouldn't tell you if I did. York was a real dealer, so I knew better than to push it. I just stood and started to head out to the back of the school. There, every freshman class had been gathered, much like the first week of school, but everything was different. Back then, everyone was nervous and unsure. Taken from an environment that was barely made to accommodate them, and put somewhere they could be themselves. They went from freaks of nature to regular people in just a couple of months, and it showed. "Alright, brats, listen up!" Coach Sarge yelled, and we all listened. "Today is the last day of class before break. You all have been training and learning how to handle yourselves, and today you're going to show how far you've come." The crowd started to buzz with excitement in pockets throughout. Looking around, I saw that one source of buzz was Adrian. He was smiling with all his teeth, and suddenly I knew what the score was. Honestly, I was an idiot for not guessing it. "Today, you will be dropped off around the forest. And then on the signal, you will go into the forest and brawl." Coach finished, and the cheers exploded. It was only from selective parts, but there was more excitement than dread. "Wait, hold on!" Samantha Von Beck shouted out over the cheers. "Is it just a free-for-all?" This actually quieted the crowd, as everyone waited for the answer from Coach. "Kind of. You will be allowed to engage anyone you want inside the forest. Winning will net you points, except for those in your home class. Beating your classmates is worth 0 points. But it's still allowed, right?" Adrian shouted with a hand raised. "Yes, we won't stop you, but to hopefully promote cooperation and to get you lot to go for new challenges, you will not be rewarded for taking down your own classmates." Adrian slammed his fists together and muttered in an evil chuckle, "Like that's gonna stop me. I don't need points." Coach Sarge shouted orders for us to file into formation for our teachers to take us to starting positions. We piled into a series of motor carts as Mr. Galacto drove possibly the shortest. "Oh man," Adrian said, rubbing his palms together. "This is going to be so good. First things first, I got a score to settle." "No!" Mary shouted and flicked Adrian's ear. "You are not going after Gwen. Do not even think about it." "What? I wasn't going after the fairy girl," Adrian defended. "Though I heard a rumor she's way tougher than she's letting on." "I don't care. Leave her alone," Mary ordered. "Fine." Adrian waved her off. "Not like she's even worth it. All glitter, no grit with her." Mary rolled her eyes. That was the best she was going to get from him, and she knew it. We've all picked up on Adrian's little quirks, one of them being that he was a bully to pick fights. He hated fairies with a passion, but his passion for brawling was brighter. So the fairy girl was mostly safe. Especially with the whole class holding him to his word. "That's what I like about you, Adrian," said Jerry, one cart forward. We all turned to look at him. "You always wear your heart on your sleeve." Adrian scowled at Jerry. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Just as I said. You have a good heart, Adrian," Jerry said as the tram came to a stop. "You should follow your heart, even against your better sense." We all just looked as Team 3 got off the tram. The skinny spellslinger commenting, "You sure that's good advice, Jerry? Man doesn't have much sense to begin with." No one disagreed as Adrian made a rude gesture at him. We got off and huddled away far enough from the rest to talk. "Adrian, what was Jerry talking about?" Adrian just shrugged. "How am I supposed to know? That Jerry is a complete weirdo. Almost impossible to read." Probably just trying to psych us out. Why? Asked Nazuri. He doesn't gain anything. We got no scores to settle with him or his team. Maybe he was being sincere, offered Ashley. Jerry is a strange guy, but he's nice. And he's right, Adrian. You act like a bully, but you're a great guy when the moment calls for it. Oh, please. Adrian tissed and crossed his arms. My mom just raised me right, that's all. Regardless, be aware, Runzer said. I doubt there's anything insidious at play, but caution is never a vice. At that, we agreed and got ready. We would split into 2 teams, a forward team of me, Adrian, and Runzer, and the rest in a find a place and stay out of danger team, which was fine by me. Mary's power was useless in combat. Nazuri seemed to reject whatever her deal was, which I understood. Lucas was a bodyguard for Ashley, and Ashley was practically mundane. We didn't know what her deal was. So that left just us 3. An arrogant wizard, a headstrong bully, and a human thundercloud. What a matchup. So what's the strategy? I asked, scanning through the woods. I saw movement in the distance, and soon the sounds of battle rolled through, but we were safe for the moment. You point them out, I knock them down, Adrian declared. And after they finish thoroughly beating you into the ground, what's the plan then? Runzer asked fairly. It wasn't that Adrian wasn't strong or tough. In fact, he was one of the strongest and toughest, but only one of. Knowing him, he was at a beeline straight to the biggest, baddest bastard in the woods. So having a next step in the plan would be important. We'll figure it out. And like that, the plan was set, whether we agreed or not. Though to be fair to Adrian, we had been practicing frequently throughout the year, so I liked our odds. We went through the woods with Runzer navigating with his magic senses. I tracked and marked the pathing, keeping a mental map in my head. Adrian ripped through the brush whenever he didn't feel like walking around. Runzer and I noted targets when they came up, and Adrian would jump out and ambush them. Mostly duos or trios that were able to hold their own, some even drawing blood off Adrian, and some even needing Runzer or me to jump in, but ultimately getting beat with Adrian cheering over them. This fucking rules! Adrian shouted. Hope we get to do this before every break. He was stomping and laughing, ruining any chance of stealth. This resulted in us getting ambushed a few times, but it didn't matter. Even with the advantages reversed, Adrian was still one of the top brawlers here. We were set to be in the top ranking by the end of the day. Stop, Runzer called, and we did. He stared off into the middle distance, focusing more on his magical senses. I started looking around, opening my own senses. My eyes and ears were sharp, but I also had the ability to feel out energy currents, if they were defined enough. But I was getting nothing. What you got, Rooney? I asked, keeping my guard. Something's out of place here. I don't quite know, but there's a different feeling in the air. Like an ice cube in oil. Adrian and I just looked to each other. Wizards were impossible to understand, but we both seemed to get the gist. I asked, should we check it out? Depends. Is it dangerous? If so, then hell yeah, Adrian decided. I'm still unsure on what it is, said Runzer, which I consider very dangerous. We should investigate. It was agreed on. We started to head towards the strange energy signature, which led us to a giant tree marking the start of the deep woods. I remember passing one weeks ago when I had planned on cutting through the woods to finish the race faster. I also remember the thing I encountered on my second pass coming back. Guys, be careful. It could be bad. I warned the others just as the wave of power came over me. A kind of repulsive force that was trying to push us away from the center of the forest. I unknowingly felt this weeks ago, but now I could sense that this area was off limits. The thought came to me that this might be what Runser was feeling. But before I could bring it up, I heard a sound. I couldn't tell at first, but as we got closer I heard it again and again until I could understand what I was hearing. Is the tree crying? No, Runser answered, his vision returning to the material world. Someone is inside the tree. We walked around until an opening was revealed. The inside of the tree was hollow, and nested inside was some guy sobbing his head off, and a gal trying to comfort him. She saw as we came into the interior of the tree. Pulling out a seemingly simple stick and pointing it at us, she spoke with a firm and demanding tone. Go away. Leave us alone. We're not fighting anyone today. Why the hell not? Adrian asked. That's what today is all about. Why even show up if you're not gonna brawl? And what the hell is this punk crying about? None of your concern. The girl stood and lifted the stick with energy coursing through it, causing runes to glow over it. Adrian lifted his hands in placation. Whoa there, truth! We're guests in your... He looked around. Tree. So relax. We're not going to attack. At least not yet. She didn't seem satisfied by that. She scowled and seemed ready to unleash power at us. But the guy spoke up first. It's okay, Rihanna. If they swear to peace, then I believe him. Rihanna slowly but steadily lowered the stick. All right, Milo. But say the word and they're gone. Adrian laughed at that and sighed. So again, what's the punk crying over? This sent the punk Milo into another wave of sobs. Rihanna death-glared at Adrian and scowled. Did no one teach you manners? Sure, but I'm also an impatient kind of guy. Adrian slammed his chest. I apologize for my friend's blunt attitude. Runser stepped up, but we are curious as to why you're sobbing in the middle of a battlefield. The deep woods repel casual wanderers, so it's fairly safe here, Rihanna explained. I see. That explains why your energy signature was so pronounced. Runser also explained. On top of the contrast from the raging fury surrounding the area, having the repellent aura of the deep woods push others away makes you stand out. Ironically, the desire to cry in solitude is what brought us here. But why is he crying? Adrian asked again. Just what the hell can be so damn depressing as to stop you from enjoying a brawl? My mom is dying. Milo sobbed into his knees. He continued to sob as Rihanna knelt to him and placed a hand on his shoulder, all the while glaring at us. Adrian nodded and rubbed the back of his neck. A look of sympathy lined his face. Yeah, I guess that'll do it. The doctors don't know how long she has left, Milo said between sobs. But I have a feeling it's not long. She's gotten a lot worse. She was barely there this morning. Your mom is in the hospital, and you're here at school? Adrian recapped with as few words as possible. He huffed and slammed his fists together, with a boom drawing everyone's eye. The look on his face was absolute rage. This is bull! We all looked at him unsure. There were a few things that could really set Adrian off, and apparently this was one of them. He pointed his finger at Milo and yelled at him, You shouldn't be wasting your time here! You need to go be with your mom, now! Milo just stared back dumbstruck, only managing to half mumble, But the rules say... Fuck the rules! Adrian cut him off. There are things more important than rules, and a man being there for his mother is one of them. We're going. Now! The fuck do you mean we? I yelled back. The guy was my best friend, but he had a bad habit of lumping others into his ideas. The fact that it worked most of the time didn't help. He just looked at me with his serious face. Come on, Kevin. This is the real deal. We have to. He said, and I felt my eye twitch, before buying an agreement. He turns to Runser. I assume I can count on you too. Runser tisked. Your incredible boldness would be misplaced, if not for its self-pronouncing force. I will help. All right then. Come on, punk. Adrian turned and headed out of the tree. Milo picked himself up like he was in a daze. But then something shifted in his eyes. He was on board. He rushed out behind Adrian and fell into stride with him. So what's the plan? Get you to the hospital your mom is at, Adrian said as the rest of us, including Rihanna, followed. Virginia Central Hospital, I assume. That is an objective, not a plan, Rihanna noted. We need a plan on how to leave the school. First, walk out the forest, Adrian listed off. Then, walk out of the school. And if a teacher catches us, tell them to fuck off. And when they use force to stop us, make them fuck off. Rihanna gasped in shock. You mean fight them? You think you can take on a teacher? Just like that? Sure. Maybe not on a one-on-one beatdown, but we're not trying to beat anyone. You mean retreat at the first opportunity, Runser said with a nod. Noble. Whatever. Just a matter of priority, Adrian said, and we continued our way out of the woods. It was decided that we would go over the fencing between the different gates. We were near the edge of the tree line when Rihanna spoke up. You do know Milo is fairykin, right? Rihanna asked, and we came to a stop. A first-generation half-fairy. His mother being a full fairy. I know who you are, Adrian Priest. You hate fairies. Furiously. So did you know Milo was a fairy? Milo's nerves seemed to be shaken at this, and looked to Adrian. Adrian didn't turn or look back. Yeah, I could smell it when we stepped into the tree. And yeah, I was kinda mad at finding some crybaby fairy punk. So why help him? Adrian tisked. I have my priorities. And putting fairy folk in their place just ain't that high on the list. It's just that simple. Adrian continued on, stepping out of the tree line and into the clearing surrounding the forest. We checked to see if the coast was clear and went to the fence. Adrian lifted everyone over and then jumped over himself. We were now on the track field circling the forest, facing the massive wall that marked the school ground border. We could have gone over, but Runser and Rihanna both pointed out that the walls were lined with countermeasures. Jumping would signal the school and the surrounding authorities, which I saw as overkill. Alright, now let's try to stealth this, Adrian said, acting again out of his known character. Runser, you got something for this? Runser nodded and focused to form a spell. With a few magic words he sent it out and over the three of us, leaving Milo and Rihanna out of it. This is the best I can guarantee if we're facing school staff. I assume the two of you have your own means. They did. Milo and Rihanna both shaped power around them, similar to Runser's spell. We continued down the track towards the school, keeping an eye out for teachers and other students, dipping down into the ditch that was even further out when we passed gates. It was smooth sailing. We were slipping by without a problem, which set my nerves on end. The smoother the start would go, the rougher the end would come. We made it off the track and back to the backfield. It was completely clear. The freshman classes were all in the woods brawling, and the rest of the school was taking their own final test of the week. We headed around the building at near a sprint. Rounding the corner, we saw our goal, the front gate, still wide open. They got anything on the front gate? Adrian asked. Yes, Runser answered. The same countermeasures as the rest of the wall, except not as extreme. When we step over that line, the whole school will know we're leaving, but not until then. Then we'll have to book it when we do. Come on! Adrian shouted and started to the gate, with the rest of us following. We were halfway across the field when a voice called out. Excuse you! Students should be in their assigned area. Looking, we saw he was the female disciplinary officer, Mrs. Steinfaus. She was marching towards us with clear intent to stop us. Report back to your class now! Book it! Adrian shouted, and we bolted towards the gate, only for Steinfaus to zoom in front of us. With the smoothest grace, she elbowed Adrian in the face, knocking him back. Trip slammed me to the ground and grappled Milo into a throw, hitting Runser. Only Rihanna was left standing, since her slower pace left her out of range. Hey, you can't do that, she shouted. You're the disciplinary officer for the girls. Mrs. Steinfeld cracked her knuckles. Don't worry, I won't hold back on you like I did with them. She took one step forward, and I reached up her thick coat past her high boots, until I felt skin. Before she could react, I unleashed my full power. I was trying to down her in one attack, and knowing she was tough enough to handle the students of this school, I didn't hold anything back. She screamed as I sent lightning up her leg, her heavy leather acting as an insulator keeping the flow inside the metal-lined materials. Spark flew out of the neck and wrists as the bulk of my attack coursed back and forth through her body. She was completely stunned. For around a full second. She regained her nerve and turned to launch a kick straight to my chest. The force was enough to lift and send me over 10 feet away, breaking my grip. As I coughed my lungs back into place, Adrian regained his footing and managed to sucker punch her, knocking her a step back. He started for a punch, commenting, "Weird fighting a girl." He threw the punch hard, only for Mrs. Steinfeld to catch his fist and twist it. You'll get used to it as you grow up. Lifting a foot, she pulled Adrian in and push-kicked him away with enough force to cross the field into a wall. Rihanna tried her hand next. Lifting her rod, she shouted a spell that unleashed a magical blast of force directly into Steinfeld, knocking her off balance for a moment. The two ladies stared at each other. Rihanna's face an expression of terror, and Steinfeld with an expression of annoyance. Rihanna tried to offer an apology, but didn't have time before Steinfeld leaped over and uppercutted her stomach, causing her to drop everything and fall over in pain. Milo took the opening to leap at Steinfeld with a short-bladed weapon. She knocked the blade away, grabbed Milo by the wrist, and flipped him over and slammed him down into the ground, adding a hammer blow to his chest. It was seemingly over. Mrs. Steinfeld had managed to down all of us. Even as I got back to my feet, I knew I couldn't win this. She wasn't only more skilled and experienced than us, but she was also somehow stronger and tougher than all of us combined. We couldn't overpower or outlast her. Then so be it, I said to myself. As hopeless as it was, I didn't go down easy. She was going to win this, but she was going to have to earn it. I refocused my power, reaching into my inner well, and brought it to the surface. I yelled as electricity started to course around and through me as a part of my body. I aimed my attack and she readied herself. Stone Shackle Cage! The ground around Steinfeld erupted and shut up, pinning her into place. Behind her I could see Runser pushing magic into the earth. Go now! I won't be able to hold her long! Adrian had recovered and took the opportunity. He tapped into his rarely used speed and rushed over to grab Milo and Rena, packing them on one shoulder each. What the hell is going on out here? Demanded the other disciplinary officer, Mr. Steinfeld, from the front door of the school. Gavin, come on! Adrian yelled and booked it to the gate. I fired my gathered energy into Mr. Steinfeld and bolted as well. We crossed the threshold and kept running. It was a full-on sprint, and we were both outpacing casual traffic. Adrian's demon blood gave him incredible strength, durability, and speed. My power didn't increase my physical power directly, but it did give me the ability to push myself beyond any limit. We pumped our legs with everything we could, but we could only sprint for so long. A minute later, a mile away, our bodies started giving out. We dived into an alleyway and huffed in exhaustion. Whoa, Milo said as Adrian set him and Rena down. That was amazing! I've never seen anyone go that fast on foot before. Yeah, I huffed. Don't ask us to do it again. I checked the area around us. I had never been to this part of the city. We were still in the outermost ring of the city, where none of the buildings were high enough for an elevator, which meant we weren't any closer to the objective. You know this area, Adrian? I asked as I scanned the streets for cops and gangsters, since we didn't want to deal with either of them. But Adrian didn't say anything from the alley. I looked back to see he was still collapsed on his knees, heaving. I looked to Milo and Rena. Hey, you two go recon. Find out where we are and how to advance. They tried to protest, but I yelled them off and went to check on Adrian. He was taking deep breaths, and I could feel the heat wave coming off of them. I could see, hidden in the shadow of the alley, his skin had shifted to a deeper, near pinkish shade. I knelt by him. You good, man? He took one final deep breath and seemed to regain himself. He stood up, dusting himself. Yeah, I just had to draw on my demon nature a bit. Is that bad? Can be, but that's for later. Adrian turned and headed out of the alley. Come on, let's find the punk pair. I followed, and we found the pair looking over a bus schedule overlay on a city map. The Progress City public transport went all over the city and even the surrounding areas. It would be the most convenient way to get to Virginia Central Hospital. The bus leaves in 5 minutes, and it gets there in just over an hour, Milo reported. Good pace, but... Adrian stepped up and poked a finger to the map. If we ride to here, get off and book it over east, and make this bus, we'll be there in under 30 minutes. You sure? I asked. Absolutely, Adrian nodded. I know these routes. It's a 3-minute gap, but I know I can make it easy. You can make it easy, Rena said. But that's not as easy for us. I can make it, Milo said, a spark of determination in his eyes. I will make it. With that settled, we boarded the bus and took the moment to rest. Nobody bothered us or even looked our way. A few people whispered between each other, and I heard a few loose words, mostly calling us delinquents, which made sense since Adrian was the only one not in the school uniform. Still, they left us alone, and the soreness of overexertion came over me. It felt like my whole body was turning into lead. I would need a whole day to recover from our minute sprint. But I only had a few minutes as the next stop came. I summoned my will and lifted myself to follow the others. We don't have to run, do we? Rihanna said. No, just hustle, Adrian said, walking a full stride, which was a jog for the rest of us. We just need to cut through Central Park, and it's just a block away. We walked alongside traffic, filled with more cars and trucks than usual, being the busiest part of the day. This resulted in us having to stop more than once to wait for lights to change. Adrian was getting impatient with every stop. Each time he seemed to debate just going through and facing the cars head on. But instead, he eventually started pulling out a pocket watch to check the time. This was new to me. How long has he been carrying a pocket watch? It was a bronze piece and looked well kept. I wanted to ask, but it wasn't the time. Eventually, we made it to the park. It was near empty, which was strange. The few times we've came, there were people everywhere. But now no one was in sight, which only made the feeling of dread that washed over me go deeper. We were about halfway through when the feeling came down on us. We all felt it and started looking around. What is that? Milo asked with a shaking voice. A super high power level, Adrian answered. It feels like an earthquake, Rihanna remarked. It's a intimidation tactic. Nothing more. Come on! Adrian tried to rally us, and he managed to get us a whole step forward before we were stopped by a figure in our path. A gritty-looking man in a beige long coat was in front of us, and it was clear he was the source of the energy signature. Well, well, well. The man spoke with a controlled bass. Bunch of punk-ass brats thinking they can skip class whenever they like. In need of a proper education, you lot are, I say. And just who the fuck are you? Adrian demanded with honest fury. The name's Mr. Agent Danforth. I'm your substitute teacher here to part a lesson in brutal reality, straight from the curriculum of Hard Knocks Academy. Oh, I bet. Got a stack of spare notebooks in your pocket? Adrian taunted back. No. You should have brought your own from home. Danforth ready to pose similar to a standard spellcaster. Because I will not be providing any paper, pencils, or mercy. His power level rose again. We were clearly outmatched. Our chance went from guaranteed to hopeless in a flash. We couldn't win. But surrender was never an option. I started drawing what was left of my power ready to go down with at least one solid hit in. But Adrian had other plans. Under his breath he whispered to us, I'll hold them off. You go ahead. What? We all said in sync. No arguing! We don't have time! Go now! Adrian's words were orders, and we could only follow. On cue, Milo jumped high into the air, over 2 stories directly over the agent. Idiot! The agent tracked Milo as he rose and bent his knees, readying his own jump, only for Adrian to bull rush him. Adrian was drawing demonic power as he burst forward like a bullet and kneed the agent in the stomach. Adrian followed that with multiple punches, which seemed to affect the agent until he backhanded Adrian, sending him flying back past me as I bolted forward. Slamming my fist into his face, landing my solid hit, the agent smiled and grabbed my wrist. Nice punch, punk! He jerked me forward and slammed his face into mine, headbutting me back to Adrian. I quickly regained my footing and senses and readied for another attack. I could see Rihanna in the distance. She had run past us to join Milo. It was just me and Adrian against a man possibly 20 times our power levels. You weren't talking to me when you said run, were you? Adrian smirked at that. Yeah, sorry about that. Wasn't really thinking. Glad you knew better. I gave him a sharp nod. Of course, man. So what's the plan? Well, we can't win, Adrian correctly noted. So we keep losing for as long as possible. War of attrition, then. Got it. I readied myself, pulling all my will and power. I was pushing a limit I wasn't used to. So was Adrian. I could smell the hint of sulfur coming off of him as it mixed with the scent of ozone I made. The air was starting to shift and wave around us. All the while the man waited unimpressed. When we were ready, Adrian leaped forward to make a swing, only to be stopped by a jab to his chest. I followed this up by shooting around them to his unguarded side to send my own jab. But I couldn't make contact as the agent sidekicked me away, turning my punch into an energy bolt, which got him in the face. It seemed to work. He stumbled back, grabbing his face, giving Adrian an opening to uppercut him into the air. I tried to recover and attack, but the agent regained his own sense before me and launched some sort of magic fire attack midair. A wave of burning heat washed over me, scorching my breath and knocking me to my knees. When I recovered, I saw Adrian and the agent trading swings like boxers. The scene showed the agent was probably a lightweight, but he was beating Adrian's heavyweight frame like it was nothing. Adrian's punches were either missing or got blocked without effort from the agent, as opposed to the hits that drilled into Adrian. Each punch boomed and crackled. I could see blood was coming from his mouth and nose, and small patches of blood were growing on his chest. Who knows how many ribs were broken? Between the blows I noticed something. That the agent wasn't paying attention to me. An opening. I stayed low and waited for a chance to take. When the agent dodged under one of Adrian's arms, he put his back to me and I took the opportunity. Firing myself at full lightning speed, I slammed into his back, wrapping myself in a full Nelson. And before he could react, I unleashed everything I had. Thunder roared as electricity flowed around, and I felt the force of Adrian punching the agent through his body. We were holding the upper hand, but it didn't last. The agent powered through the pain to grab Adrian's fist in his, and delivered an impossible kick that launched Adrian high into the air. He slammed both his elbows into me, breaking the grapple, then spun a roundhouse kick to my head before grabbing me and jumping into the air after Adrian. My senses were shot, and I couldn't do anything as we joined Adrian at the apex of his flight. The agent grabbed my ankles and summoned another fire burst to propel us, spun around to slam me into Adrian, sending us both shooting down into the earth. That was it for me. My body and power were spent, and my will was exhausted. As I tried to keep my senses, I could hear Adrian was groaning and coughing under me, and felt him trying to recover. He soon gave up. "I think I'm spent," he coughed out. "Same here. Could barely stay awake," I coughed back. "At least it was fun." "Fuck you," was the last thing I managed before slipping into darkness. I didn't have any dreams in my beaten down state, and simply woke up in a hospital bed. My whole body was sore, and I could tell I pushed my power past my self-tolerance, feeling static tingles in my limbs, which made me ask myself why I hadn't gotten some painkillers if I was in a hospital. I lifted my body and looked around. On one side was Adrian in another bed, also coming to, and on the other was Mr. Galacto sitting patiently in a chair. "You're up. Good," was all he said, before pulling out his flask and taking a gulp. "What the hell happened?" I asked, trying to get out of bed with mixed results. "You got your ass beat." "I'm aware of that part. After that." "Agent Danforth brought you here to Virginia Central in pursuit of the other two truants. I arrived with Mr. Thompson, and we took custody of all of you. I decided to put you two here to rest." "What about Milo and his mom?" Adrian asked, getting to his feet. Mr. Galacto didn't answer, and said he stood up and escorted us out of the room. "Let's go regroup with the others." We walked, more limped, out into the hall until we heard the sound of Milo sobbing. We came up to a window looking over a room where Milo was crying over a bed with nothing but a bunch of dusty-looking flowers on it. Rihanna and Vice Principal Thompson were with him. "So where's his mom?" I asked, confused. "When fairies die, their bodies decay incredibly quickly," Adrian answered. "They don't even leave bones behind." With that explained, I just stood there and waited until the moment passed. When it did, we were all lined up in the hall and got the score dealt to us. "While your actions were understandable and even admirable," Mr. Thompson said, looking over us, "we cannot reward this behavior. You four broke the rules, and disciplinary action is needed." "It was all me. They did nothing," Adrian said. "I forced them all into this." "Mr. Priest, are you confessing to kidnapping?" Mr. Galacto asked. "Sure. I made them skip class and come here," Adrian confirmed, and a well of fury rose in me. "The fuck you did?" I shouted at him. "I came here of my own accord. Fuck you!" "Mr. Zapotec, I believe Mr. Priest is trying to take the fall for you," Thomas said. "Yeah, I know, and I'm not going to even pretend like I did this under your will. I did all this because I wanted to. Put it in the record. I chose all of this." Everyone looked at me after my outburst with various expressions. Adrian burst out in roaring laughter. "All right, man. Sorry about that. I should know better. Kevin came along on his own. But it was all my plan. Milo and Rena didn't have a choice.
Are you sure about this? Mr. Thompson asked,
and both Adrian and I nodded.
Very well. Mr. Evans? Miss Anderson? You're off the hook. Mr. Priest? Mr. Zapotec? You two, along with Mr. Runzer, who also took full credit for his actions, will be serving a great number of detentions. For truancy, unreasonable assault of staff, and now for malice persuasion of other students. That one will double your time.
Adrian just saluted in acknowledgement. After a while, a hospital staff member came by with a jar holding the remains of Milo's mom, and we left to head back to school by bus.
Thank you, Adrian, Milo said while he rode. I can't tell you. Thank you.
Whatever. Adrian waved him off. It's just how things should be. Nothing more.
Well, I hope this means we can be friends.
What? Adrian said in shock and laughed. Like I would ever be friends with a fairy. Milo seemed disheartened by that. He looked to me, and all I could do was shrug. Adrian told the guy before all this happened. He had his priorities, and this was above his hatred of fairies. Luckily, the guy had Rihanna to comfort him. I was just happy the day was almost over.